Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're glad to have you here joining us once again at January 15th, 2019. We're broadcasting out of Elk River, Minnesota, which is very cold this time of the year. It happens to be pretty much just about the lowest average temperatures of the year. Generally, the average high is about 20 degrees, and the average low is probably 5 to 7, probably about 5 degrees. So yeah, we're definitely winter soldiers up here in the deep north. Now, one of the problems with January and February is you have these pretty fancy holidays on November and December and very early January, but then after that, winter just keeps dragging on, and then there's no holidays until Easter or Memorial Day or July 4th and everything like that. So it is a bit of a stretch. It's definitely a marathon to get to the end, ladies and gentlemen, to get to the end of winter time, but we'll make it. So today I was a little torn whether we should have an emergency broadcast or not, but I think we're just going to go ahead and go with the normal broadcast. One of the reasons why is because I wanted to test out some new sound suppressant material. So we're probably going to be doing that for the next few days. So if you hear deviations in the quality of sound, that pretty much explains it right there. Just when we're setting up some new equipment to try to deaden the sound or to get more directional voice transmissions from where I'm standing to where the insanely expensive camera is. So it'll be a work in progress. I mean, it might be better, it might be worse. That's why we experiment. Now, you can't always expect things to be better just because you put in the time. Sometimes things can go worse and significantly worse, which is why it's important to just learn from errors of judgment, if that happens to be the case, ladies and gentlemen. But hopefully, I'm fairly optimistic that the sound acoustic foam will help to eradicate the situation. And now we got actual acoustic foam on order. It's those little fingers that are made of some really soft foam. It absorbs a lot of noise and everything. So we're going to be using that, not in the next coming days, but probably by next week we'll have that. So hopefully, you can't guarantee it'll make the sound any better, but likely it shouldn't make it any worse. Now, right now we're just putting together some systems to try to get some nascent testing or embryonic testing, and maybe if these systems work just fine, then we won't need to do the acoustic foam, but more than likely we will find a use for the acoustic foam as well. So there's also that to look forward to. Now, getting to the subject for today. What I wanted to cover today, see, when we took the producers were poking around in Micro Center. It's a national chain. It's basically like Radio Shack meets Best Buy, except Radio Shack is out of business, so it's basically Best Buy meets Mouser, DigiKey, Allied Electronics, Future Elect, and all those other places that sell electrical stuff. So the producers were poking around and they saw what was called a gas sensor. And what the gas sensor does is it measures total volatile organic compounds, VOCs, and carbon dioxide, CO2s. It also measures ambient temperature and something else too. But it got me looking at the carbon dioxide a little bit and the VOCs, and what I found were some rather alarming statistics, ladies and gentlemen. So, now CO2, you've probably heard about climate change and how global warming is affecting CO2 levels. So generally, the CO2 levels outdoors are about 400 parts per million. And when you get up to about 800 parts per million, that's when people start getting lethargy, sluggishness, fatigue, drowsiness, sore eyes, muscles, and itchy eyes and skin and all that stuff too. So it is very important to make sure you're getting a low carbon dioxide environment, and basically the lowest you can get it is 400 if that's what the level is outside, because it's air that's pretty much all around us. Now, if you're in a metropolitan area or if you're near an industry or heavy traffic, then the carbon dioxide level is going to be significantly higher than the 400 parts per million. Now, the total VOCs, that's not something we're going to really touch on too much today. We're mostly going to focus on the carbon dioxide and how to get an environment where it's at a low level. Now, so what we found, ladies and gentlemen, is outdoor air is approximately 400 parts per million CO2. Higher levels are found near high traffic zones, industry, and sources of combustion. That includes natural gas furnaces and propane furnaces and all that too. So that's why you've probably heard of carbon monoxide detectors, which is the CO particle bonds. So carbon dioxide is just the C with the two O's. So it's very similar to carbon monoxide, but carbon monoxide at high levels can kill you. Carbon dioxide is more of a slow death at high levels, which is why it's still important to keep it low. And one of the problems with carbon dioxide is all the sensors out there are very expensive if you want to get a good meter that actually measures accurately. Now, what the producers found at Micro Center was is this little unit made by Adafruit, CCS811. There's also a BE6801 made by Bosch. Yeah, it measures CO2, total VOC, temp, and it measures the CO2 from 400 parts per million to 32,768 parts per million. I'm guessing that's maybe some 16-bit value or whatever. And its baseline correction requires 24 hours in the environment that it's in. So it's not entirely accurate, but it gives you good relative measurements. And apparently it has some burn-in too, where it takes you 48 hours, but sounds like they're going to make a video about how to hook up the gas sensor to an Arduino. I mean, they made some other videos on the YouTube channel, so hopefully we'll have that up in time for sometime in the very near future, ladies and gentlemen. But apparently if you want to actually buy a CO2 sensor or a meter, it costs hundreds of dollars, and it may or may not be worth it depending on if you think you're living in a dangerous environment. But occupational safety standards is about 5,000 parts per million. Levels between 1,000 and 5,000 cause lethargy, drowsiness, stale air. Ventilation rates follow the accepted standard of American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and AC, ASHRAE, Standard 62. What Standard 62 calls out for is 15 cubic feet per person per minute of outside air for schools, and for offices it's 20 cubic feet per minute of outside air. So a lot of these ventilation systems that you see in commercial or educational buildings or institutes of higher learning or industry, maybe not so much industry, they're a little bit more lax because the environments are just extremely dirty and toxic in the first place. But more or less, they're getting a lot of air from outside, because almost 99% of the time outdoor air is cleaner than indoor air. Now, in the deep north of Minnesota, that's a bit of a problem because you can't, generally between December and February, you basically have to keep your windows shut unless you want cold air to come rushing in. At November and March, there might be intermittent days. Same with October and May, or in April. But pretty much May through September, you can just about leave your windows open all the time. Or have an air conditioning unit, and that just grabs air from outside and cools it off and dehumidifies and everything. And when the humidity level gets up to 90, 80%, 100%, it's definitely good to have dehumidified air, which is what the AC unit does. So it works out pretty good. But yeah, these buildings, they're required to follow standards. All new buildings are built to these standards. Now the recommended levels are below 800 parts per million for offices and 1,000 parts per million for schools. One of the problems with schools is they're more densely used than an office. I mean, a school you might have 500 people in a couple thousand square foot, and an office there might only be 40 people in that equivalent amount of space. So that's usually why these standards deviate slightly. The indoor levels might not exceed 600 above outdoor. As like we alluded to earlier, if there's a industry or if there's a source of combustion near a school and the outdoor level is maybe 800, then the school can't exceed 1,400. I mean, to say the school should be below 800 if the outdoor is 800 would be a bit of a fallacy and maybe impossible, unless you had some ecosystem of indoor plants, which we'll get to later. Inadequate CO2 indicates a lack of outside air that also permits other air pollutants to fester. So that's why when you measure the CO2, it is a good indicator of because indoors a lot of things can produce pollutants. Your carpet, your cabinets, some old blankets, maybe got some yoga mats that output a bunch of weird chemical VOCs. So air purifiers do not reduce the CO2 levels, but they do reduce the VOCs. So they certainly help in that regard, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, they're not completely useless, but to reduce carbon dioxide, you basically, well, the only thing that I was able to find is indoor plants that could work for that. And of course, opening up the windows and getting access to the outdoor airs. But if the carbon dioxide levels are rising outdoors, then that doesn't even really help you much. So it is probably a good idea to at least keep some tabs on that and hopefully alleviate some of the excessive use of carbon dioxide. Some of the carbon dioxide monitors that I did find were SAN-10, which is a personal CO2 monitor, and then a CO2 mini personal CO2 monitor. Again, they were, I think the CO2 mini was maybe $100, but the SAN-10 was a bit more expensive. So the indoor plants help to clean air. Research has found that there's up to 900 different compounds that have been detected in some buildings, including benzene, ethylbenzene, toluene, and xylene. The actual bacteria in the potting soil is what actually removes the VOCs, but you need to have the plant growing to feed the nutrients and the bacteria into the plants. Otherwise, if you remove the plant and you just have the pot with the soil, eventually that'll lose its potency after a couple of weeks. So everything works symbiotically, ladies and gentlemen. And even though the research hasn't been very extensive, there have been field trials that have shown that plants will reduce CO2 levels. See, one of the things with plants is they'll absorb CO2, light, and water to make carbohydrates, but then about 50% of that goes back after the plant respirates. And it usually does that at night. That's why it may not be the most sage strategy to sleep in a room with your door closed and indoor plants, because they'll emit the carbon dioxide at night. So the carbon dioxide is in your room that you're sleeping and may elevate to a level that makes it uncomfortable for you to sleep. Now it sounds like a bit of a fallacy, because if you have plants, you automatically assume that they're supposed to be healthier, but sometimes you got to be a little careful with things, ladies and gentlemen. So, I mean, plants are great. Overall, they will reduce the CO2 level as long as they're healthy plants and they're alive. And there's one theory out there that possibly adding lime to the soil could react with the CO2 to reduce the acidity of it and take up more of the CO2, but again, we're not entirely sure about that. That's something you probably want to look into. NASA's actually done a lot of studies on indoor plants. Now, what they recommended for the best for pollutant and CO2 removal: English lily, philodendrous spider plants, golden pothos, and then of course some others that perform well but not quite as good as those first three. English ivy, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Gerbia daisy, chrysanthemums, Boston fern, and then of course Dracana and Spathiphyllum, peace lily, I guess is what it's called. So the best plants are English ivy, spider plants, golden pothos, and philodendrons. And some plants that were runner-up and still acceptable, if you could find worthy version: Gerbia daisy, chrysanthemums, Boston ferns, Dracana, and Spathiphyllum, also known as the peace lily. So those are great plants. They're big plants. They probably don't require a lot of light, so they'll survive a very long time indoors and hopefully reduce the CO2 levels to a comfortable point. Now again, it's important to practice good ventilation as well. That seems to be the general consensus, that there's basically no other way around that. One of the problems in Minnesota, if you have a fireplace or something like that, you might not be getting any air from outside. It's just constantly recirculating the air from inside because it wants to be efficient and not burn up a lot of outdoor air. So again, there are some things maybe you can do. Maybe leave a little bit of ventilation in your room and just keep it at a comfortable temperature. Make sure it's getting a little bit of outdoor air, not enough to wake up in the middle of the night freezing. And then it's probably just a good idea to get outside and walk around too, to get good, clean, healthy air. So, I mean, it wasn't carbon dioxide. It seems like a very, very critical, important object. But as long as you're being healthy and taking the right precautions, getting outside, not sitting in cars all day and night, and if you're sleeping in a car, then you're probably exposed to a lot of carbon dioxide. But indoor plants definitely help. Not getting garbage furniture or cabinets that output VOCs also makes a huge difference. And then getting the right plants too. English ivy and the Dracana. Those plants, the big plants with lots of leaves and everything and can survive pretty hardy conditions. Those are definitely ideal plants to get indoors, especially ones that last for 20 years and you can just kind of put them off in a corner and water them every once in a while and not have to worry about sticking them in front of a window and in the way of everything. So again, it's just important to be healthy. There's a lot of pitfalls to good health. I mean, there's a lot of chicanery that goes on out there as well. I mean, basically, probably 90% of supplements are just all people trying to bamboozle you. There may be one or two supplements that work good as advertised, but by and large, it's just trying to be healthy. If your environment, the air, the food, the water, your activity, your mindset, I mean, those all contribute to good health. And you'll probably eradicate a lot of other weird issues too. If you sleep poorly, or if you have anxiety, or you're depressed, or you have muscle fatigue, or you just aren't a very happy person, just trying to be healthy and take the necessary steps. And then researching the stuff is kind of fun too. Gives you something to do and everything like that. And animals indoors will also contribute to CO2 as well, sad to say. So if you got animals sleeping in your bed, they will also contribute to CO2. Because any mammal emits CO2, they breathe in the oxygen and emit the CO2, it's carbon dioxide. So they're sort of taking airborne resources from you. Now, yeah, they might be breathing in pollutants too, but you certainly wouldn't want to think that in that sense. But well, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this pretty much wraps up the show. We're going to be testing some different sound suppression equipment, acoustic foam, and all that stuff. So hopefully that'll make the show better. I almost said great again, but technically it's Text Messages was, I mean, the first episode of Text Messages, the sound was just horrible. I mean, it sounded like there's a big massive echo, and yeah, it was pretty bad. And hopefully we're getting better, but we'll see. I mean, we did try to buy a microphone once, but for some reason it didn't want to hook up into the XLR input on the camera, and so that didn't really work out. Now, yeah, for some of the videos that's shown on the computer, that microphone worked great, but for any other purposes, for filming Text Messages of the Resurrection, it doesn't work out so good, which is basically the flagship of our channel. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have you. We salute you, and thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow night.